Hi everyone, I'm Matt Gaschk with SoundersFC.com alongside Arlo White, and this is a special edition of the review, our season recap. And it's hard to believe that the season's already come to an end, isn't it?
It is amazing, isn't it? 47 games, including friendlies, and the events at the Home Depot Centre will stay with us for a while. It was a disappointing defeat in the second leg to the LA Galaxy, but a topsy-turvy season. So much to talk about, always compelling, never dull. It started badly, ended the second half of the season really, really well. So it's been a fun ride to be on, hasn't it?
Absolutely, and for as many great moments as there were, the Mike Facito goal against Kansas City to win that one, and the last stages of the game, you know, all those Roger Levesque scoring at DC United, the many goals Freddie Montero had, Steve Zakawani emerging. There were also some down moments as well, and the injuries definitely had an effect on the team this season.
Well, they did, and I thought the season started really well on first kick night against the Philadelphia Union. I thought the Union came as an expansion franchise, and they played quite well in the early stages of the game, but the Sounders took control, and Brad Evans scored a very good goal. Freddie Montero got off the mark in the first game, and that was great. Then the New York game at home gave you a sense of the frustration that was to follow. Was it 18 shots to 5 that night against the New York Red Bulls? And in the end, it was Kanji's goal that separated the teams in a 1-0 defeat for the Sounders. So that just served notice, really, that perhaps all at that stage wasn't right, and there'd be a bit of frustration ahead, and that's how it proved to be. But you're absolutely right. You look at pre-season and Nate Jacob being injured and having to be operated upon. It was a blow because in the expansion draft, Sebastian Le Toux was left unprotected, and of course Philadelphia picked him up, and he subsequently had a very good season. But it was a risk taken by the front office, but a calculated one. And then who's to know that Nate Jacob was going to be injured in that way? So it left us short of strikers in the early part of the season, and it meant that Freddie Montero often had to play up front on his own, and that's not really what suits Freddie, and that's what he was saying. He likes to have a partner up there, and once he did later in the season, he started scoring goals. Other injuries, key injuries. Ozzie Alonso was injured against the LA Galaxy at Quest Field. He missed a crucial chunk of the season. He came back just in time because he was a driving force. Brad Evans sadly didn't feature after the World Cup break. He had a good first half of the season, but his knee problems got the better of him. And one of the big injuries really was John Kennedy Hurtado, a terrible ACL injury that he suffered against San Jose. You feel really sorry for him, but he'll be back next season as good as ever. We've seen him virtually every day down at the training ground since the day it happened, remarkably, running around and starting his rehab, and the club have looked after him very well. So look for him next year to come back very, very strong. But once that Iani Park partnership got together, that was pretty solid over the second half of the season too.
Absolutely. You mentioned Brad Evans. One of the things he did over the first half of the season was anything Ziggy Schmidt asked him to do, he did it, and he may have had his up and down moments, but you could really say he filled in well just about everywhere he was asked to play.
Absolutely, and one of the things, like I've mentioned, with the lack of strikers, there's one performance from Brad Evans that sticks in my memory, and that was at the Red Bull Arena. Now, the Sounders were coming off that 4-0 thrashing by the LA Galaxy, and, you know, confidence was pretty low, perhaps, at that stage. So they went to the Red Bull Arena, and lo and behold, they put a great shift in. They showed guts, they showed determination, and they showed a true desire to get the season back on track. And Brad Evans, I thought, playing in that striker's role, an unfamiliar role to him. He's a midfielder who likes to get forward, but he's not necessarily a striker. He ran and ran all night. He must have covered every blade of grass on the field. He was brilliant. And then in the end, with less than 5 minutes to go, it was his chip ball over to Freddie Montero. That's one of my moments of the season. The chest down, the thigh down, and the left foot finish into the corner of Kundal's net. And that was the points. OK, it was still a bit stop-start after that, but for me, that was one of the finest moments of the season, and Montero was involved, but Brad Evans had a great game that night.
And Brad Evans in that game, I remember him laying down on the field after he was subbed out. And
Exhausted.
I remember thinking to myself, exhausted. Turns out that was the knee injury that ended up causing him to miss so many games at the end of the year.
Yeah. And again, his rehabilitation has been frustratingly slow, actually, whereas John Kennedy's has been, because John Kennedy's, I think, was a more definable injury, one that's been treated very well with surgery, and as I say, the rehabilitation. Brad's was a little more complicated, and I spoke to him. He's a little bit down, but I think he's positive as well, that after Christmas, when we're talking about pre-season training and that sort of thing, that he'll be in a position to be able to come back. And, you know, there's half a season that he hasn't put into his legs. Right. So you can maybe tack that on to the end of his career. You know, you have to look at the silver linings in this. Evans back makes the Sounders even stronger than they are already. So we look forward to him getting back on the field.
Once they were able to overcome that What did you see as the turning point for the team?
Well, for me, and I know different people have different views of when it turned around, but the definable moment for me when I thought things were looking up was FC Dallas at home. Now, Ziggy sent a clear message out to the fans, to everybody, to the team, crucially, that things had to change, that we'd seen enough of those sort of performances up to that point. So he sent out a very young midfield. Miguel Montaño started, later sent off, but played very well indeed.
He played well against Dallas, too. This is one of the best teams in the league. This isn't him playing well against a USL team or something like that. He played well against a very good team.
He did, and he later let himself down by getting sent off in that challenge with Breck Shea. But, you know, and he didn't start another game for the rest of the season in Major League Soccer, but he's a talent to keep an eye on. In the centre of midfield, Nathan Sturgis started his residency, if you like, in the centre of the park. Mike Seaman started, and Steve Zakuani, of course, was in that midfield as well. It was 1-0 until the last 3 minutes of the game on a Montero header before David Ferreira, who's one of the 3 nominees for MLS Player of the Year, MVP, scored a quite superb goal to level it up at 1-1. So in the end, it was disappointing to draw 1-1, but for me, that was the spark that sent us on that magical ride in the second half of the season.
And it really was incredible. I mean, there were games we fall behind 1-0 against Toronto at home, and my first thought is, okay, I guess we're going to win this one 2-1, and we end up winning 3-2 at home in that one. But it really did feel like, regardless of how the game started, it was either going to end in a win or a draw, and most nights it was a win.
Yeah, it was almost, going behind was a minor inconvenience. That's what it felt like at the time, whereas at the start of the season, it was a quasi-disaster. You know, once we went behind, that was it. We weren't going to win the game. But going down to DC United, you know, that sort of started the road run as well, a late goal by Roger Levesque on the assist by Freddie Montero. You mentioned comeback Chicago, which was just fabulous, wasn't it? Going 1-0 down to a slightly dodgy penalty to Thorrington, Jeff Park with a handball, but then Montero scoring the equaliser and then that dramatic late winner. 2-0 over Houston at home as well, and we owed them one after them knocking us out of the playoffs in the inaugural season. You know, just great nights. Chivas Fan Appreciation Night was absolutely fabulous. So it was a great ride. You know, if you look at the season, against the true quality, the Sounders record wasn't brilliant. It was no coincidence that we lost all 4 games in MLS to the LA Galaxy, because this year they were just a better team. FC Dallas, we're a better team, but we didn't lose to them, but neither did we beat them. Real Salt Lake, a couple of draws as well. I think 6th was just about right on the performance of the whole season. I definitely think the Sounders are, at this moment in time, the best of the rest. Now the challenge for 2011 is going to be to catch the true class of the league, the LA Galaxies, the Real Salt Lakes and the FC Dallases, and maybe you could put the New York Red Bulls in that bracket as well. And that's going to be the challenge, and that's what the front office will be working hard, I think, to do next year. But considering the situation halfway through the season to where we ended up, we'd have snapped your hands off if you'd have offered me at the Home Depot Centre, July the 4th, a 2-leg playoff against the LA Galaxy, because at the time, we weren't going very far, were we? And we rescued the season, and it was thrilling.
Yeah, just going to ask you, what kind of things are you looking forward to in 2011? Things have progressed forward, and it'll be interesting for me to see what's Alvaro Fernandez going to be like when he gets an off season, first of all, and then a training camp to work his way into this team.
Yeah, I think there are some big questions, some key questions. I think Casey Keller's going to be back, and I think that's fantastic. Casey's a great leader of the team on the field and a great ambassador off it, and a very, very fine goalkeeper. So it'll be interesting to see what plays out in that situation. For me, the expansion draft is something that I dread. And I'm sure now the guys have finished with the season. I'm sure 1 or 2 of them are dreading it as well, because, you know, it's like I've said to you before, it's almost like, as a parent, which you are, having to choose your favourite 2 of your 3 kids, you know.
Well, that's easy for me. I go with no.
Bad news, Gaschk family. But you know what I mean. It's a hard thing to have to do, and I'm glad I don't have to be part of that process. And, you know, we'll leave that to Adrian, to Ziggy, and to Chris Henderson to sort out. They'll be in a room comparing notes and lists, I'm sure. So it'll be interesting to see who returns next year. Interesting to see, as you say, Alvaro Fernandez. He came, he had a big summer, World Cup quarter-finalist, got married, had his first baby, emigrated to the United States, played initially when he arrived, and then
scored 2 goals in his first 3 games.
And they were crucial goals as well, because Metapan it qualified as effectively for the group stage of the Champions League, and Houston put the seal on what at the time was a very, very important victory late on, a nice assist from Freddie Montero, and we'll get into that sort of period of the season shortly. But yeah, we'll see how he responds to spending a lot of time on the bench, but has a pre-season, comes into it, knows what to expect. So we're expecting good things from him next year. Steve Zakawani, continued progress from him, I think. That's the key thing. He's been an absolute star. These are the young players that the front office are banking on, you know, and they've invested in them. So we'll see how they develop next year. That's going to be very exciting.
And I guess maybe the final thing, you've got to be looking forward to next year, and you'll have a full preseason working with this team as well, right?
Yeah, that'll be awesome. I mean, it's been a wild ride. You know, there's been some amazing moments, and you know, we said it without wanting to sound like a scratch record. Walking away from the Home Depot Centre in July the 4th as an announcer, you buzz off the team, you buzz off what's going on the field, and when you're losing more than you're winning, you know, it's not coal mining, as my dad always tells me, but it's not as easy as when you're winning, you know, and it's not as much fun as when you're winning. And when the season turned around, there were some genuinely thrilling moments, and I thoroughly enjoyed them. The Chicago winner at home, Freddie Montero, in the final moments of the season. You know, my head nearly came off my shoulders. It was fabulous. The Mike Facito goal early in the season against Kansas City. You know, I sort of gave it a big shouty call on that one, and that was great fun. You know, announcing that the Sounders were in the playoffs for the second straight year after the victory at Kansas City, and of course the US Open Cup victory. It was a radio call we did that night, and my abiding memory of it is the atmosphere in the stadium, which was epic. It was so loud, not just in bursts, in 5-minute time frames. It was 90 minutes of just bedlam. And the players responded to it on the field, and Son Onayasi was the hero. So calling that for me was great. So I'll go away, rest the larynx for a couple of months, back in the UK, see some soccer over there, but obviously follow things that are happening here very, very closely, and look forward to next season. And for me, with Portland and Vancouver in MLS now, we can start looking forward to that. Can't wait for the schedules to come out in February. So that's going to be exciting.
Absolutely. It's one thing I'm definitely looking forward to. Is Portland and Vancouver coming into the league. I know following them in the USL was a lot of fun, being able to keep up with those rivalries. I'm sure it's going to be heightened tenfold here in MLS, and really looking forward to that. And looking forward to working with you again next year. Should be a lot of fun.
You too, Matt. It's been great.
And really, more than anything, I think we need 3 months away from each other.
Yeah, we do. But then we'll have a hug when I get back.
Absolutely. He's Arlo White. I'm Matt Gaschk. This has been your season review for SoundersFC.com.